You're listening to Big World Network.
Just Kill Me, Season 3, Episode 4, Papa McKenna. Written and read by Wendy Herman. We drove in relative silence, but it was comfortable silence, except for the occasional grin and blush we gave each other due to our little distraction at Talia's house. I couldn't believe how my life had transformed in the past 12 hours. Just yesterday I had resigned myself to the fact that I was Trevor's wife until death do us part, and now that mindset, that Freya, seemed like a world away, and I was so glad. I felt like a whole new section of my brain had suddenly woken up after 20 years. I sighed and glanced at the clock in Ty's silver Elantra, 10 p.m. It was just before 11:30 a.m. that morning when I had made love to Ty, the first time. I felt my cheeks get hot again as I imagined him naked, embracing me with such unbridled passion, first on my living room floor and then in Talia's guest room. We were like teenagers who'd gotten their first taste of the forbidden fruit, and now we couldn't get enough. I smiled and put my hand on his thigh. He gave me a sideways glance and raised his eyebrows. "Oh, no, you don't," I responded to his nonverbal question. "I need you slightly on edge just in case you have to rough up my father for me." He pretended to pout. I slid my hand up his thigh a few inches, and he swallowed hard. "Then we'll find a hotel for the night." "I can pull over right now. The road's practically deserted," he said, his breaths uneven. I looked out the window. We were on the freeway, and we were far from alone. It was Friday night, and everyone was headed into the city with us, except that we were going straight through to a small town about an hour on the other side. I gave him a "what the hell are you talking about" stare, and he grinned. That damn dimple. I wanted to rip it off and keep it in my pocket forever. I removed my hand, and he whimpered like a puppy. He was so adorable. I was surprised by a sudden flood of anger and sadness at the 20 years we'd lost. Aside from my children, the time had been such a waste. I had been with the wrong man, and worse, the right one had been so close the whole time. I reached up and ran my fingers through the graying hair just above his ear. I couldn't stop touching him. I was so afraid I would wake up and realize the last few months had been a cruel dream. "You know, if you continue to touch me like that, I will pull over and take you right here, on the side of the busy freeway. We'll get arrested and you'll have to call Talia and explain why we're in jail," he teased. I reluctantly stopped torturing him and placed my hands on my lap. Talia would be easy to tell. In fact, she'd probably think it was awesome. I wouldn't know what to say to the boys, though. I could just hear Blaze. "Mommy, can I tell my friends you're a criminal now?" I chuckled, but shook my head to get rid of the thought. "What did you tell them about Trevor?" he asked. It was the question I'd been dreading. "Promise me you won't get mad." I cringed. He glanced at me, surprise in his eyes. "Of course not, honey. I wouldn't have a clue what to tell them. At least that wouldn't require intense therapy later in life, anyway." He laughed at his own joke, but then stopped abruptly when he realized I wasn't laughing with him. "You didn't tell them anything, did you?" "I couldn't do it. Not yet. I told them he was out of town on business. They're used to that, so it didn't raise any red flags. I'm sorry. I chickened out. Freya, it's okay. I think you did the right thing. We can figure out what to tell them together, after we know more about what's going on ourselves." That made me feel so much better. I gave him a ravishing smile and took a deep, cleansing breath. But there was something else we needed to talk about. "So you haven't said how it went down at headquarters. Did Trevor regain consciousness?" He laughed. "Oh, yeah, and was he pissed. I had gotten all the way into the parking garage where Hart and O'Reilly— you remember him, the really tall, quiet guy? Anyway, I had called Hart and given him the Reader's Digest version of what had happened and asked him to meet me in the garage. So they start yanking Trevor out of the back seat of my car, and he wakes up and starts flailing like a kid about to get a shot. Even with his hands and feet tied, he got in a few good kicks. Luckily, Hart had brought a syringe full of— hell, I don't know what was in it, but he got it into Trevor, and 2 seconds later he was a rag doll again." He had been rambling like he was talking to just another fellow agent about something funny that had happened at work. Then he glanced at me and realized I was more than a little disturbed by his jovial account. His smile fell, and he put his hand on my knee. "I'm sorry, Frey. I know. He's still the father of your children. He's a bad guy. You realize that, right?" Of course I do, but it's more than that. I have a terrible feeling that we've only just discovered the tip of the iceberg with him. I'm afraid he's done some awful, evil things, and I don't know how I'm going to get through it, get my kids through it. How do you tell a child that his daddy is a monster? I just think it may be a little too soon to be so happy about it. You're right. I'm sorry. He was silent for a moment as he concentrated on changing lanes to get around a slow-moving 18-wheeler. I didn't mean to be a buzzkill. So much has happened today. I'm still waiting to wake up in my bed and realize it's all been a dream. And a nightmare. Nightmare? I hadn't thought that comment through as I noticed his expression change to desperate uncertainty. I put my hand on his thigh again. Oh, not you. You're the dream part. He relaxed and winked at me. Trevor's the nightmare, not to mention the whole top-secret brain implant thing. Something occurred to me just then. Ty, did you ever think that it might be a bad idea for the two of us to be alone together? This garnered a single eyebrow raise. I'd forgotten that he and Trevor both had that recessive gene. I mean, what if the implants go all apeshit and we snap and start killing people? Not that that wouldn't be kind of cool, as long as they were all bad, but I'm just saying. I think we're safe. It hasn't happened in 20 years. Why would it now? We were getting off the interstate now, and it would be back roads the rest of the way to the little hole in the wall called Garrity. I thought about his statement for a minute before I voiced my thoughts. Are you absolutely sure we haven't been activated at all in the past 2 decades? I mean, how can we be sure? The memory would be, stored in our implants where our conscious minds couldn't access it? Or would it be erased immediately after it happened? I don't know how it all works, but you would think the technology included a way to keep us in the dark when we'd been awakened, I guess, right? I don't know, but you're freaking me out now. We may never know, so stop thinking about it. It's just going to drive you crazy. Oh, I'm already there, baby. Join me, won't you, in Crazyville? We have cookies. He laughed and then gave me a super serious look and asked, What kind of cookies? What kind would you like? Chocolate chip and Freya. I glanced at him without turning my head, allowing the smirk to take over my face. Later, big guy. Even goddesses need a rest period. I gave his thigh a seductive squeeze, though, keeping my delicious anticipation to myself about getting to our hotel room later. We enjoyed a few minutes of quiet as Ty turned the Elantra onto a highway, then a county road, and finally an old highway in desperate need of repair, and decent lighting. We were almost there. I didn't have butterflies in my stomach. They were more like demon bats, accentuating the feeling of dread I had about seeing my father again after so many years. And then there was the possibility that he wouldn't be there at all, long gone to rot in some other tiny town, who knows where. My mother had mentioned once that she had heard he'd been forced into retirement, kicking and screaming, and consequently out of spite had vanished, where even the army couldn't find him. I imagined if he was involved in more than just the RVW project, that his own brain contained several secrets the government may not want to get out, and he knew if they found him, they would likely kill him. The more I thought about it, the more it looked like the address my mom gave me probably was either no longer good or never had been. I was jolted out of my head by some serious turbulence. We had turned down a dirt road, and it had not been leveled, ever. I cringed at every bump, and there were a lot, feeling sorry for Ty's tires. I had grown up in small towns, though, so I knew something Ty didn't. Ty, if you speed up, it's not as bumpy. He gave me a confused look. Doesn't that just ruin my suspension faster? His tone was light, but his face was clearly wishing his new toy was at least paid off. Trust me, speed up and the tires will skim across the top of the uneven dirt. He still wasn't sure, and I could see his mental tires spinning, trying to figure out if I was making any sense. Ty, I've done it myself. If I'd driven as slow as you are right now, I not only wouldn't have made curfew, I would have needed new tires every time I had a date. Now punch it! I guess he figured it couldn't possibly be worse, and he accelerated. As we neared 40 miles per hour, 45, 50, he sighed with relief, as the bouncing reduced considerably. I'm in love with a genius, he said, not looking at me but meaning every word. Say that again, I ordered. You're a genius, he flashed me his Superman smile. Not that part. It wasn't fair of me, really, to ask so much of him while he was trying to navigate an unknown, dimly lit, severely graded country road going 50 miles per hour. But I couldn't help myself. Later I would make a mental note to not risk our lives just to hear those 3 little words. He reached over and took my hand. I love you. I knew I would love the sound of it coming from his mouth, but I didn't expect to feel my eyes tear up in response. I was turning into a real sap. If I started watching movies on Lifetime after this, I was going to have to kill myself for the good of all mankind. Ty dared to take a microsecond to turn away from the road as he said it, and looked into my eyes, so I had no doubt that he believed what he was saying was possibly the most important thing he'd ever or would ever say. I opened my mouth to respond in kind, and very happy to do so, when something caught my attention out of the corner of my eye, something on the road in front of us. So instead of professing my undying love, I screamed, "Look out!" Ty snapped his head toward the road and took evasive action. As we drove down the ditch on the other side and into a cornfield, I thought I had felt something impact the vehicle. Ty quickly turned us around so our headlights would illuminate the road. Then he put it in park and we both leapt out of the car. I was sure I had seen a person, a man, standing in the middle of the road. "Did we hit him?" Ty asked me as we clambered up the ditch. "I don't know. We hit something, but I don't know." We got to the road and saw a lump lying right in the middle of it. We both froze, and I could feel my palms start to sweat. Then the lump moved, moaning as it slowly stood up. The old man started to brush off his pants with one hand, and that's when we noticed the shotgun in the other. Ty moved to draw his weapon, which I hadn't realized he was wearing, but I motioned for him to hold off a minute. I stepped forward to address our victim, and possibly our murderer, out here in the dark on a deserted country road. It really was too cliché. "Sir, are you all right?" "Jesus Christ, girl! What the hell were you 2 driving so goddamn fast down my road for?" "We're very sorry. We didn't see you." "No shit!" "Look, we just need to know if you're hurt, so we can—" "I'm not hurt, so unless your goal was to kill me, you can clear your conscience and get on with your useless, boring lives, the both of you." This guy was a real ray of sunshine. Ty and I exchanged looks and shrugs, relieved we hadn't killed anyone today, yet. Ty stepped closer to the man, who was now limping toward us, holding his shotgun over his shoulder. He was wearing overalls and old work boots with no laces. His hair was gray, overgrown, and unkempt, and he had a suspicious scowl on his wrinkled face. Ty didn't seem intimidated as he approached. "We're headed for Garrity. Can you tell us if we're going the right—" "You're in it. But there's nothing for you here. So why don't you turn your luxury SUV around and head back to the big city where you belong?" He was just a few feet from us now, and I really scrutinized his appearance. He screamed lifelong bachelor/crazy old coot, and I was ready to be rid of him. I decided to ask him if he knew my father, and then, expecting him to say no, we could grant him his wish and get the hell out of Garrity. "Sir—" "Stop calling me sir. My name's Jerry." "Okay, Jerry—" "You don't get to call me Jerry. Only my friends call me Jerry. You call me Mr. McKenna." "Okay, Mr.—" My heart stopped. Ty's jaw dropped open as he stood frozen next to me, staring at the old man. "You gotta be shitting me," Ty whispered. The 3 of us stood there regarding each other. Finally, I felt brave enough to ask. "Dad?" It had come out sounding more like an accusation than a question. The old man walked right up to me and stared me in the face. When I saw his eyes, I knew it was him. It was one of the few things I remembered about him. He had beautiful ice-blue eyes, and my brother had inherited the same, but mine were dark brown, like my mother's. When he didn't say anything, I reiterated, "Dad?" But it still wasn't a question. "Freya?" I don't know why I was surprised that he remembered my name. He was my father, deadbeat or not. I closed my eyes in shock and slowly nodded my head. He sighed deeply, like he used to do when I'd bring home B's and my report card. I hadn't expected an "I've missed you so much, my sweet baby girl," and a warm embrace, but I guess I'd expected something related to happiness, or at least not disdain. Instead, I got shit.
You're listening to Big World Network.